Welcome to the Right Time Podcast. The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Ooh, the bad guys in the South, kiddos. My name is Clint Yates, and you are listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get in touch with us through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at ESPN Radio, at Clint Yates. You can hear the noise behind me. That is because I am live in New Orleans at the NABJ Convention and Job Fair, National Association of Black Journalists. It is a yearly event that brings together all sorts of people down here at the ESPN tent. They're doing some recruiting, a lot of folks coming through. For those of you who don't know, or those of you listeners who are up and coming trying to figure out how to get into the business, get yourself to NABJ. It works for plenty of people. Bomani and I met up here last year at one point. I'm here right now. I'm looking out at some people. I'm going to tell you who's going to be on the guest list today. We're going to have Michael Eaves, SportsCenter host. He's going to be right here with us, right next to us on the couch. Elle Duncan, also a SportsCenter host, is going to be here at 5 o'clock. On the line, we're going to have Adam Schefter, who's going to talk a little NFL. And Jay Harris is here as well. You all know him from SportsCenter in addition. And lastly, we're going to have Tom Haberstroh, ESPN NBA insider. So we got a packed show today, a little different vibe, and we're going to be here for the rest of the week as well. So understand that going into things. Family vibe down here, and I'm in New Orleans, which means I'm going to eat some good food. That being said, let's get to the sports. My man Money Mayweather, if nothing else, knows how to sell a fight. August 28th is coming up, losing a little luster as far as finding itself in the headlines here and there. That real long, in-depth story about McGregor came out, I believe it was 2 days ago. So now, Money's got to find a way to get himself back in the headlines. And he's doing it with a tactic that we rarely see from him, something we like to call humility. Let's hear what he had to say to Stephen A. Smith. It was a conversation with him on SportsCenter about, on paper, McGregor might outmatch him.
He's a lot younger. You know, when you look at the two on paper, when you look at myself and you look at Conor McGregor, on paper, he's taller, has a longer reach. He's a bigger man from top to bottom. A lot younger, so youth is on his side. And I've been off a couple years. So, and now I'm in my 40s. So, you know, if you look at everything on paper, it leans towards Conor McGregor.
What's funny about that is not just what he specifically said, but his whole tone has taken a far more demure approach. He's like, oh, yeah, of course. Suddenly he sounds like a guy that's a substitute teacher in a class as opposed to a dog barking on stage in Vegas, which I, by the way, respect a lot. Switch up your tone, throw a little different pitch. Make people think that you've got a little, I don't know, like I said before, humility in your life. This is a very interesting tactic for Mayweather at this stage of the game. And he also admits maybe he's not the guy that he used to be.
I'm older.
What does that mean?
I'm not the same.
What does that mean?
I'm not the same.
What does that mean?
I'm not the same fighter I was 2 years ago. I'm not the same fighter I was 5 years ago.
You're the same man?
But I'm not the same fighter. I lost a step. You see what you just said when I fought Andre Berto. A fighter like Andre Berto don't even supposed to go the distance with Floyd Mayweather. But remember, I was 38. So like I said before, it's obvious I'm slipping a little bit to even let a fighter like that go the distance with me.
Let me tell you all something, young bucks out there. If anybody ever admits to you without being asked that they've lost a step, they're lying. That is nothing but a trap set in order to make Vegas and people who are giving Vegas money believe that somehow his confidence is shaken. There's no way he says that unless he is strictly trying to throw you off the trail so that when he's finally in the ring, he can bang McGregor with something he's never seen before. I don't mind the tactic. I actually think it's pretty smart at this stage. But the problem is that if McGregor starts to believe it, then he's got a real issue. He also said he won't be as defensive against McGregor, which I found interesting. Let's hear him say it himself.
This can't be a defensive fight.
Excuse me?
I got to go to him. I got to go to him.
Are you saying that you're going to go to Conor McGregor?
I got to go to
You're
him.
not going to back up. You're going to go to him.
I have to go to him.
Why?
I got to do what I got to do.
Why? You didn't have to go to other fighters in order to beat them. Why do you feel the need to do that in this fight?
Because I owe the public for the Pacquiao fight. Since they wasn't pleased with the Pacquiao fight, they're going to be pleased with this fight right here.
So this is where it all falls apart. Because Stephen A. can clearly tell he's lying, and the lies are escalating. Why would he not be defensive? Like, is there some universe in which any of us have seen Mayweather fight? I'm not even a big boxing guy. But I've never seen Mayweather go after anybody, except for that one time he hit that dude when his guard was down or whatever it was, like sort of after, not after the bell, but when dude thought that they were sort of dapping up and he just punched him in the face. I can't remember what fight that was because I don't catalog fights like that. That's what Stephen A. does. But that's the only time I can really remember Mayweather decide, let me just hit him right quick for no reason. Mayweather ain't going to be offensive against him. He's going to sit back and let this dude punch his wind out and then maybe hit him with some body blows and just outlast him. He knows that. Stephen A. knows that, but they're going through the motions. And finally, he says, I guess he wants to embarrass McGregor.
You walking out to beat this man, or you walking out there to embarrass him?
Both. He gonna know. One thing he gonna know. I don't care who you disrespect, but one thing you gonna know. Not to ever disrespect an American again. That's what you will know. August 26th.
Dun, 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 dun. Since when did Mayweather turn into Johnny Patriot? That is the strangest twist I could have expected to hear in all of this. Not the lies about how he's going to fight, not the lies about his ability to actually box, but suddenly he's defending the honor of the nation against another man. I mean, is he trying to actually turn this into Rocky IV? I was on Sports Station last week, and we talked about the fact that Drago is apparently going to be in the new Rocky, a fight nobody is checking for. Are you sure that comparing it, putting it up to some nationalism sense is what you actually want to do? I think people were interested in this fight from a legit spectacle standpoint. If Mayweather tries to act like this is supposed to be a real bout, I actually think that turns off more people than it turns on. You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in here live at NABJ in New Orleans, talking about Money Mayweather and McGregor, Conor McGregor. Mayweather is suddenly just a very humble man. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm in my 40s. This young man could step into the ring and possibly beat me. Vegas, please change the line so that I can bet on myself and make more money. This is fascinating to me because I think the overall point here is that Money Mayweather is realizing he doesn't really have anything to win in this situation. Think about it. He beats the snot out of McGregor. Okay, big deal. The guy's not a boxer. He plays his normal game, if you will, holds it close to the vest, defends, gets a lot more blows landed, and wins by decision. Okay, again, big deal. You do that against every boxer. Messes around and gets popped a couple times, then maybe knocks McGregor down a couple times. Okay, then you look extremely fragile. And legacy-wise, that sticks with you in a different way. Fourth option being an all-out loss, and obviously that's a super embarrassment. There's not a lot of win-wins in this. So for him to be able to approach this from this way, he's setting up a side narrative that makes it seem like the victory is something that matters if it actually happens. Because otherwise, this is routine. It was just supposed to go down. There's no real scenario in which if you're a Mayweather fan, you say, oh, yeah, that was good. That was a good performance. I'm glad he did it. Because for Conor, we understand what's going on here. He needs that paycheck. Does Mayweather really need this? Is it a matter of pride? Is it a matter of lack of relevance? Like, why is he actually doing this outside of the money, which, is fine by me. That's his nickname. But now he's trying to spin it into a sort of reality zone that I don't think anybody's buying. Stephen A. wasn't even buying it, and he was sitting right there in the room with him. Don't think that this has convinced me any more to watch this bout than anything else in the last week. I was about 50-50 on it. Wasn't entirely sure if it was something I was going to buy or something I was going to, just sort of, you go to your homie's house and you check it out. I don't like the idea of Mayweather trying to lie to me about what this is. Though on the one end, to start this off, they were super crude. Probably went to some territory I didn't love either. But I'm fine with that. In one sense, it's boxing. It's MMA. You're supposed to be out there yelling and screaming and acting like jerks and maniacs. But this whole soft step thing, I'm not here for that. That's not selling me. Mayweather, come on, man. Just tell everybody what you're going to do. You're going to hang back until you can get one big punch You're going to deliver it, and he's going to fall down, and he's going to be embarrassed, and you're going to win. That's all that's going to happen. It don't matter if you're 40 years old. It doesn't matter how young he is. My man can't box. And you know that, and that's why he took the fight, and that's why he took the payday. Coming up, going to talk to Sports Center host Michael Eaves. We are live here in New Orleans at NABJ 2017, the convention. Going to talk a little bit about diversity in the business and what it's like and how he got to the position he did. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones. It's ESPN Radio, and this is The Right Time.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Wednesday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Hit me up, fam, on the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. The Right Time is brought to you by Pennzoil Synthetics, taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. Sitting right next to me is my man, Michael Eaves, Sports Center host. You've seen him on the various programs. You've seen him at the Olympics. How you doing, Michael?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I love the city. Number one, New Orleans is my favorite food city in America. And coming to this event, I love this event. It's like a family reunion for me and some of my people, man. I love coming here.
How many years have you been doing this, and what do you feel that the experience is like for young journalists trying to get their names out there in the business?
My very first one was in 1997 in Chicago, and I've been coming ever since. I've only missed 2 of them since then. I had to miss last year, as you mentioned. I was in the Olympics, and then back in 2013, had a job change right at the time of the convention, so I had to miss it. It was down in Orlando, I believe. You know, for young journalists, especially young journalists of color, it is the number one resource for you to climb that ladder to whatever success you deem for yourself, because you get 2 things here. You get connections, which, as we know, is so critical in this business, or any industry for that matter, but especially in this one. But you also have a network of people to also help you hone your craft.
Yeah.
You bring, let's say you would be on air like I am. Like, I've had so many people through the years when I first started coming here in my early 20s critiquing my tapes and seeing things that I didn't know or things I wasn't aware of, and helped me get better much faster than if I was just by myself kicking in whatever little market I was in. And if you're a writer, same thing. You have people that have, you know, written for newspapers, large dailies and magazines, or even written books that can just help you, you know, fine-tune what your skill set is and then get you to where you want to be. To me, it's invaluable. If you are a young person of color, you want to get into this industry, you should make it a point to come here every single year. If you don't have the money, plan for it. Talk to your church. Talk to your grandma. Make that money. You can write it off on your taxes. You need to be here because it's invaluable for an experience standpoint to help you along your career.
We're talking with Michael Eaves here on The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in. We're down in New Orleans at NABJ. If you don't mind taking us back a little bit, tell the people a little bit about your path, because I know I always get people hitting me up. Yo, man, Yates, how did you get here? What happened? All of a sudden I hear you all the time, or I see you here and there, or what's going on? I think a lot of people consider themselves desirable of this sort of position, and you're on air obviously all the time on the television sense, but what was your path in a short form in terms of the steps you took to get to where you are now?
I grew up in a really small town in western part of Kentucky, only like 800 people. But I always dreamed of being an athlete, like so many young kids. But then it got to a certain point, I'm watching so many games, and I'm seeing dudes like Brian Gumbel, his brother Greg, and even Brent Musburger and Bob Costin, like, yo, look at their jobs, though. Like, they're at more games than the dudes that play the games, and they get paid for it, and they're at all the cool stuff. I was like, all right, so if the athletic thing doesn't work out, I'm going to maybe pursue that career. And then after my knee got jacked up in high school, I went to University of Kentucky, and I was like, all right, I want to be a sports broadcaster. What do I need to do? And the guidance counselor said, you need to major in journalism. So that's what I started doing. There wasn't much broadcasting curriculum in Kentucky in the early 90s, but then did a little radio stuff. And I got a break. I was in the right place at the right time. I went to ask for a fellowship at one of the local TV stations, and the news director offered me a job on the spot.
Wow.
Right? But it was a grunt job.
Yeah.
He said, this was a Friday before classes started my senior year. He said, be here Monday, 5 o'clock. You're going to help with the morning show. That's literally all he said. So I'm like, all right, cool. I guess, run prompter, scripts, tapes, that kind of thing. I get in, and then the overnight producer says, yeah, you have to produce the local cut-ins. I'm like, what in the hell is a local cut-in, right? So it was a CBS station. So during CBS This Morning, they had these local news cut-ins. I had to produce those. I didn't know what that was, dude. I'd never been to a TV station in my life, right?
So this is all new to you.
Brand new opening day. But hung with it. I did it for 2 semesters, and, sometimes I would stay late after my shift and skip class because that was more valuable for me. So, my last 2 semesters of my senior year of school, I'm at work 5 days a week at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
Right? I mean, think about it.
Grinding.
Right. When you was in school, a lot of people, you getting home at 5 a.m. I'm going to work, but it paid off. I got a full-time producing job, but I told my news director, I want to do sports. Kept the hustle. I started doing some sports stuff in my news segments. Next thing you know, I got a full-time reporting job, then moved to Anchor, then I moved to Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay.
The Grizzlies came from Vancouver. I started doing their sidelines. Then I went to L.A. and started doing games for the Clippers, Lakers, Dodgers, Angels out there. And then I had a little brief spot in Al Jazeera. Then I've been at ESPN the last 2 years, man.
So for those of you out there listening, man, there's a path for everybody.
It is.
Not everybody hits that homer on the first one and all of a sudden finds himself in Bristol yelling at a camera.
As a matter of fact, Clint, it's unrealistic for you to expect that to be your path, okay? Sure, there are people who've done it, whether here or some other network, but they are by far the exception. They might be the LeBron James, but there's another 440 dudes in the league who weren't LeBron James but still got to the league. You have to find your own path, and just because some cat gets it this way and you got to do it a different way doesn't mean anything relative to you. It's just like your path was different, but you got to stay on that grind if you want to get to where you want to be. That's it.
Michael Eaves joins us here on The Right Time with Bomani Jones. Clinton Yates filling in here. We're live at NABJ 2017 in New Orleans. Colin Kaepernick, I want to ask you about this in a media context.
No doubt.
The first day that he decided he was going to protest was actually a preseason game, week 3 last year. He sat on the bench.
Right.
Later, the kneeling in San Diego became famous. But the first day he did it, the only person who noticed was Steve Weish, another journalist of color, and he felt comfortable talking to him about that.
Correct.
It was one of those things that showed me how important diversity in newsrooms is, because you don't get that story otherwise. Talk to me a little bit about what you've learned about how important it is, not just from a posterity standpoint, but from a merit standpoint in journalism.
We all come from different backgrounds and experiences, right? And so let's say we're all in a newsroom. We have this collective goal of putting on the best product possible. If all of us came from the exact same spot, our perspective is going to be very narrow. If you have people who grew up in different parts of the country, in different socioeconomic classes, from different races, different religion, the perspective on pretty much everything is going to be wider, and you can tell a better story. Yeah. I know some people don't want to hear about diversity because so many people hear diversity and they think somebody they know is losing their job, right? Well, at the same time, that person that has that job could actually probably be better at their job if they worked in a more diverse environment. Like, they never see it that way. But as you're talking about from a merit standpoint, yes, like, there is so much value in having broader perspective because you just do a better overall job. And oftentimes, usually when diversity is mentioned because something bad happened.
Yeah, like, somebody says, whoop, they screwed up. If you'd have more black people, you wouldn't have made that mistake.
Exactly, right? Well, you know what? That's absolutely true. And on the flip side of that, too, let's say you have some, let's say it's BET. Mm-hmm. If they're all black people, is their stuff going to be as good? Probably not, right? You should have some Hispanic people, some Asian, some Caucasian people there. Like, diversity matters so much in pretty much everything we do in terms, for me, of a plus standpoint. And anyone who tries to downplay it, they're just trying to be selfish.
He's Michael Eaves. He's a SportsCenter host, and he's a good dude joining me here in New Orleans. Thank you, Michael.
No problem, bro.
Coming up, going to talk about Major League Baseball players. They're going to be wearing nickname jerseys coming up in a weekend or two from here. I don't love this idea.
That might get out of control.
I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones. It's The Right Time on ESPN Radio.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates. My melanin is moving. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get in touch with us through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at ESPN Radio, at Clinton Yates. We're down at NABJ in New Orleans, which means that random people are popping through, which means my man Ryan Smith just showed up, chilling. You've seen him on ABC's 2020. You've seen him on OTL. You've seen the both of us on OTL.
Yes.
What's going on, Ryan?
Man, I'm just hanging. I just got off a plane like an hour ago. Came right here, reviewing people's reels, helping people out at NABJ. Man, there's a lot of people looking for a job, so just trying to help people, man. That's why we're here.
What's your history with this event? We talked to Michael before, and he said he'd been coming since the 90s in Chicago, and he really found it to be a very helpful experience for him, not just socially but professionally. How often do you make it down here?
I have been here twice, but there's a reason for that. See, I was a lawyer in my previous life.
Right.
So I didn't know anything about this, and when I started working at CNN years ago, I started coming. This is my third time. And for me, it was more about getting to know people in the industry. I didn't know anyone I mean, all I knew was the people I work with at CNN.
Right.
And this was the way I got to know people at NBC, at ABC. This is eventually how I got to grow my career. So for me, it was about not really being a part of the journalistic world, but then being able to come here and understand what it's all about and how it works.
Well, what do you think are some of the things that you learned in that regard? I mean, because coming in at that stage, not only are you an older person, but B, you're an accomplished, smart person on your own. You know, so having somebody tell you, "Ooh, I didn't really like the way you move your hands there," or whatever. You know what I'm saying? I imagine that's not that easy to deal with. What was it like, sort of stepping into the game at that stage in terms of learning from other professionals?
I think people were less willing to be honest with me because they thought I already had something, but I didn't really have much. But I think for me, the biggest thing was, first of all, let's just say, like when I first came here, hanging out at this place, especially late night, with the people in NABJ.
Don't give away all the company secrets here.
Let me tell you about this thing that happened at 3 a.m. once. No. The biggest thing I learned was just really how to network. I mean, I know that's going to sound cliche, but there's a certain way to network in journalism that I didn't understand at all. Very different from law. Law is very journalism is a little ego-driven too, but law is a different kind of ego-driven. Journalism is it's just learning the people and the players. I do not know anyone. Like, I got to be hit over the head to understand who I should be talking to, or I'll be talking to somebody and I have no idea who that person is, and that's the head of a network. So, to me, that's really what I learned. It wasn't really about learning how to do news better or learning how to do a story better. It was about learning the people.
We're talking with Ryan Smith here. You see him on ABC's 2020. You see him on ESPN's Outside the Lines. Clinton Yates filling in for Bomani Jones here on The Right Time on ESPN Radio, live at NABJ in New Orleans. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Is there like a subset of lawyers now on TV club that you sort of run into at these things? And he said that with a little bit of a groan. What's it like being in that club now that, you're in the big time?
Man, I'm telling you, it's like me, Sonny Hostin, let me think. Dan Abrams, to an extent, used to be Roger Cossack, who he's a little before my time.
Right.
But I had talked to him before, a bunch of other guys. All these people came from law, and now they're in TV, and we all got to act like we know something when really we're brand new. And lawyers never like to admit that they don't know anything.
Right.
So it's been kind of an awkward thing for all of us, but it is definitely a club. It's definitely, and I think all of us try to lean on our law a little bit for what we don't know in journalism.
Right.
Like, I've never done what you've done. I've never been able to really sort of work a beat and understand the nuance of that. So I come in a different way, and that in many ways I have shortcomings, but I just have to do it differently through law.
Is there any part of you that feels that maybe, if you had done it earlier, you might not have done law, so to speak? I mean, is there any part of, where did you decide that, being in the media is something I want to do, even though at the core I am a lawyer?
How can I say this? I would never have wanted to be a journalist before a lawyer. I just feel like being a lawyer teaches you how to look at a problem in a different way.
That was your calling.
Yeah. I mean, it was my calling, but it was also it's just the way you look at things. You just learn how to look at things in a way that kind of peels back the layers, just like you do as a journalist.
Right.
But in journalism, so this thing, I just feel like you come to the game late, so you learn a lot of things late, but eventually you catch up.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the same goes for journalism. That's the reason why you stay in the business for so long.
Yeah.
And it's just as simple as that. We're talking with Ryan Smith. You see him on ABC's 2020. You see him on ESPN's Outside the Lines. So I asked Michael Eaves this before, and the question was about diversity in newsrooms and the importance of it from a merit standpoint, not just sort of a numbers standpoint. Yeah. Coming from law and being at whatever law firms, wherever you may be, how do those two things compare in terms of what you saw in the law world diversity-wise versus what you see in the media world?
It's about the same.
Really?
Very little diversity up top, very little say for black folks especially up top, and it's like pulling teeth. I mean, I'll be honest. It's just like law was the same way. I mean, I can remember being an associate and then a partner and having that minority voice and not really having a say and having it to be at the point where they need you so badly that now you finally have a voice.
Right.
And it's the same way in journalism. And I thought it was going to be different, I think, because I saw more black faces on television. But I was really surprised at the fact that you could be a top black voice in television and still have very little say over what it is that you're doing on television.
Is there any advice you have for young folks trying to get into this business, especially people who didn't start off in it the way that you did?
Follow Clinton Yates. That's it. There's nothing else.
He wouldn't have said that unless he was sitting right next to me.
He laughed and shook his head.
I
Yeah.
did.
Oh, yeah.
Brian Smith,
no, wait.
ABC's
Advice?
2020.
Can I give one piece of
Yes,
advice?
of course.
One piece of advice is whatever it is that you love, follow it. It sounds cliche, but we get in this business and we stop doing what we like. We do what people tell us to do. I always thought I wanted to be in sports. That's what I started out in, working for the Jacksonville Jaguars. After a while, I wanted to do TV, so I did that. Don't let the naysayers tell you what area you got to be in. And if you're here at NABJ, go up to the place that you like, not the place that people tell you to go up to.
Right.
And get a job there. It's going to make a difference in your career.
He's Ryan. He's Smith. ABC 2020. I see him all the time. You're looking good, brother.
What's up, man, I'm trying,
Appreciate it, man.
I got the white on. It's hot
What are you
down here.
doing next that you can reveal?
What am I doing? Drinks with the ABC people, then some drinks with the ESPN
I meant
people later.
in far as journalism.
Oh.
Goodness gracious.
Then a party later tonight. Man, I'm doing a story for 2020 on ID.
Okay.
That involves, this is going to sound kind of messed up. I'll be quick.
Yeah.
It involves a man who allegedly killed his family, and we're talking to the leader of a cult, hopefully, tomorrow,
Wow.
that he was involved in. So that's kind of the crazy part. And then on the sports part, I'm working on a story about the McNair family. Remember Steve McNair?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we spoke to his family, and hopefully that'll be coming out soon
All right.
at some point.
We'll look forward to that.
Yeah.
He's Ryan Smith. You can find him on 2020 and on OTL. Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, man.
No doubt.
Talk soon.
Coming up, should baseball have suspended Joe West for calling Adrian Beltre a complainer? I'll answer that one next. My name's Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones. This is The Right Time on ESPN Radio.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Wednesday. We're presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You can get in touch with us through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at ESPN Radio, at Clinton Yates, live in New Orleans at NABJ 2017. We've been talking to some people from around the network. Michael Eaves joined us. Ryan Smith joined us. Elle Duncan is going to join us next segment. But now we're going to talk about my favorite sport, baseball. You all know who Joe West is. Some people call him Ump Show. He's got country music careers. Joe is one of the umpires in the major leagues that is a character and a half, to say the very, very least. Now he's been suspended for an interview he did with USA Today in June, in which he called Adrian Beltre, who just got 3,000 hits, who's a surefire Hall of Famer, he called the guy a complainer. Apparently, Major League Baseball took offense to this. They decided they were going to suspend him, and the World Umpires Association said that the union basically is just not about this. And the concern was that West's remarks created an appearance of lack of impartiality. Now, I'm going to have to say something about this, because right now it's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. One place where Major League Baseball could really, really liven up this game is if this unwritten rule about umpires forcibly being absolutely nothing to do with the game changed. I'm not some hardcore purist that has an issue with an umpire being a character on the field. A lot of people say, hey, nobody pays to see the umpires. That might be true, but that doesn't mean that the umpires can't have a little personality. Joe West, I don't love his personality specifically, but as a matter of course, it does not bother me to hear umps talk about players. I mean, they're not judges of law. At the end of the day, it's not that serious. There's no reason why an umpire shouldn't be able to say something about a player that they feel is affecting the way that they do their job. If a player is going to be able to say something, which you find all the time, I'm not sure I understand why it's such a problem to have umpires do it as well. Do I want every ump running down the line to punch a guy out every single time he strikes out? No. But as a matter of course, again, the personalities around the game. Tell me a little bit about Blue, and not just from the hometown broadcasters. Let me know who these people are. I read a great story about a woman in minor league baseball the other day who was recruited as an umpire, and now it's what she does full time. people don't seem to understand that umpiring is as tough to get to in the big leagues as it is being a ball player. And while this is sort of a tangent on the Joe West situation, my point is that umpiring is one of those things about baseball that when you play and when you really enjoy it a lot, it's such a vital cog in terms of all of the little things that happen on a regular basis that I don't get why Big League Baseball wants to stifle the role to strictly a procedural one. I don't get it. Some of the most fun times I had growing up playing baseball, whether it was Little League, Babe Ruth, Pony League, and on the travel ball, was just kicking it with Blue. They're always typically relatively funny dudes, simply because all they could do is stand around and watch baseball half the time. They got to find some way to pass the time. Mic up and umper two. I know it was fun in the All-Star game to have guys in the outfield during play. Give me a little chatter from Blue. I would love that. There's a reasonable portion of the fan base that would probably love it as well. Again, every part of the game is worth publicizing if you were looking to grow it overall. Whether that's playing, whether that's coaching, whether that's umpiring, or whether that's being part of the people who make the game go. Grounds crews come to mind. All this stuff is there for the mining. Silencing everything so that just the players are the only ones representing you is not smart business. Never mind the fact that the big leagues aren't good at that anyway. Shannon and I were talking about this off air the other day. Mike Trout plays in Anaheim. Nobody knows who he is. That's a problem. You've got to find a way. So when Joe West comes out and says something about a guy who, by the way, we've discussed on this program before as well, is probably fully undermarketed and has been his whole career, suspending him? For what? Massive overreaction. On every single level. And I'm not a Joe West guy. But to me, it's not even about him. It's about this long arm of the law that baseball seems to feel the need to constantly reach out and touch people with. It's forcing everybody to think this is the most boring thing on earth, because in some ways it is. And I watch more baseball than half of you out there. I'm trying to find a way to get to a baseball game tomorrow night. New Orleans Baby Cake, Shannon. That's the name of that team.
Yeah, I know, and I actually knew that, which is really
You knew that?
disturbing. Yeah, I did.
Really?
Yeah.
I just feel that overall, and Shannon, we've talked about this as a kid growing up playing baseball, there's so many parts of the game that aren't just homers and strikeouts. It's the little things. It's those small parts of the game that build up everything else. And Blue is part of it, man. The most fun I had, I will repeat, beyond communicating with your teammates, beyond the trash you talk with the other guys on the field, was talking to Blue. It's just something you do. But if you tune into a big league game, you'd assume that they never said a word to each other, because everybody's got to be stone-faced, and God forbid you show anybody up.
I didn't have a problem with West's comments, because that's part of the human element of baseball. That's why we have umpires in the first place. They know hitters' tendencies. They study the games just like everyone else, so they know how batters and what pitchers do. So if you know that you have a problem with Beltre, at least he's a complainer, not a problem, but a complainer, West should feel freely enough to speak about that,
I agree. And I just, again, it's one of those things where Major League Baseball only looks at baseball as a product in the terms of only itself. And I say that because I watch a lot of baseball. We got the Little League regionals going on right now. Tune into one of those games. See how different it is. It's not just because they're children and they cry when they strike out. It's because they try different stuff. Their approach to the game is different. There's so many parts of baseball that are undersold at the major league level. It should not surprise them at all that it is simply a regional sport and not the national one it once was. Sell the game and the product, not just the players and the jerseys, and people will come back to the ballpark and come back to their televisions. It's a lifestyle. It's not just a sport. That's how you got to get people. They got to like what it is, not just the shiny, gimmicky stuff. Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. Coming up, Elle Duncan is going to join us. You know her from SportsCenter. We're live at NABJ 2017 in New Orleans. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones. This is The Right Time on ESPN Radio.
Thanks for listening to the Right Time Podcast. Please come back tomorrow for more. And don't forget to listen to The Right Time with Bomani Jones from 4 p.m. to 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Daddy, where do babies come from?
Honey?
Mommy went to the store.
Oh, well, you see, there's a mommy and a daddy, right?
Right.
And see, when they call Geico, they could save a bunch of money on car insurance.
Oh, really? And that makes them happy?
Yes, that makes them very happy.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we could have this talk, sunshine.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Welcome to the Right Time Podcast. The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
The bad guys in the bayou. Welcome to the Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Wednesday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on the Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Hit me up on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed at ESPN Radio, at Clinton Yates. We are live at NABJ 2017. The convention and the job fair right now. And joining us is SportsCenter's Elle Duncan.
Hi. Hey, Clinton. I've been stalking you on Twitter for like some time now, so it's nice to finally get a chance to chat with you in person.
It is good because we were supposed to do some TV appearances that didn't happen, and she's sort of giving me the stink eye about that. But
he's busy.
But I will say this. We've been at the conference here, and we've been talking about the different things we've been doing, and I see you helping some young folks in terms of their reels and all that. How much experience do you have here at NABJ? How many times have you been, and what is this experience like for you at this stage of your career?
You know what? I actually don't have tons of experience at NABJ. This is my third one. I think it's a really cool opportunity just being on this side. I've never been to NABJ in a capacity of trying to find a job.
Okay.
I've always been representing a company when I go. But I think it's a good opportunity to meet other people and also keep you on your toes. I mean, I keep listening to other conversations that are happening, right? Like, I want to know what Meg Green tends to think about someone's reel. And so, I'm kind of walking around getting information as well. But look, when push comes to shove, as you know, Clinton, when you have a dream or an idea, most of it is trying to figure out how to facilitate that, right? And that's the common question I keep getting, like, well, where do I even start? And this is a great place to come and just get some feedback and at the very least network, which you know is important.
Elle Duncan joins us here, the Right Time with Bomani Jones. Clinton Yates filling in. I've talked to two guys about the experience coming up in this business. Talking to a woman now.
Yep.
I would love to hear your perspective on what it's like at the lower stages in terms of trying to get into the business, because Michael Eaves told a story about how some guy just said, hey, here's a shot, show up at 5 a.m., and you're here and you got the job. Things are obviously very different because of how our society works. I guess I'm just saying to the young women out there that are looking to get into this business, what specific advice do you have in that capacity?
Just be really willing to do a lot of different things. Not those kinds of things. But to be honest, I had 100 jobs. I've lived 100 lives, and just to be really calculated, because I think the worst thing that people can do is pander to women, and specifically in sports, and say, like, okay, like, you're good enough, or like, you'll do. One of the things that I hear that makes my skin crawl is when someone's like, yeah, like, she can actually, competently talk about sports. I'm like, well, she actually should be able to. That is her job, right? So they almost make concessions for you if you're a woman. I would say just, like, be prepared. You have to be more prepared than the men. You just do. You have to be on it. You have to be ready to talk knowledgeably about sports or whatever your subject is. And also, I think in sports specifically with women, we tend to, because we are concerned with getting hit with that, well, what would you know, you never played aspect, which has happened quite a bit. There's a guy that's standing over there at a former company I used to work at that was my boss that told me the same thing. We tend to try
inside information here at NABJ.
He, as my boss, legitimately told me, well, what would you know about that because you never played in the NFL? I'm like, well, you didn't either.
Right.
And you talk about sports. But I think we tend to, like, try to bog people down with numbers. Like, well, if you don't believe me, I have all these stats to prove you. You don't have to do any of those things. You don't have to try hard. You just need to be really, really prepared. So willing to be prepared and be willing to accept and understand that, unfortunately, there will be stations that will have 6 men and they'll all look the same, but as soon as there's one woman in the fold, you might not be in the fold because they've already met their woman quotient. Like, those things are real. There's not a lot that you can do about it, but just be willing to work 10 times as hard.
SportsCenter's Elle Duncan joins us here on The Right Time with Bomani Jones. Clinton Yates filling in here. NABJ 2017. We're live in New Orleans. How far do you think, and this is a very general question, though, but in your career, how far do you think we've come in terms of accepting women of color, people of color, into the old boys club that is sports broadcasting?
I mean, obviously I think we've got a long way to go. I think it's better. I think that ESPN's really leading the charge. I'm not saying that as a company woman. Just look at the proofs in the pudding. Just
right.
Watch ESPN, right? Like, and I don't think it's because it's an affirmative action bid, like let's get some black faces on here so that we can represent the country. I think it's that they go and get the most talented people, and there are very talented people who are women of color and just people of color in general. But we do have a long way to go. And in particular, I think we have a long way to go in terms of journalists, right? There are so many former athletes, and let's be honest, in the major sports, most of them tend to be people of color.
Yeah.
They're going to get the jobs because they've got that experience. I think that we need to have more pure journalists, pure reporters, pure entertainers who don't necessarily have a broad athletic background. They need to be getting opportunities as well. But, I mean, what do you think, Clinton? Like, you're in this.
I feel that I agree with you on that front, and I also feel that because the way that I came into this was I was a sports writer and I did radio in college.
Right.
I then moved into sort of the political and social realm.
Right.
And then moved back to sports. I always suggest to young journalists, try a lot of things.
Yep.
You know, you don't have to hyper-focus on one specific genre or one specific topic because you think it's going to, allow you to ascend the ladder more quickly. If you broaden your experience, you're more likely to be able to bring that to another facet of your journalism work, which will only help. And I don't know that we teach that well enough at the lower levels at this point.
I would agree with you. I think you do. It's one of those things where it's like I left college with the plan of doing this, and so that's what it's about. And I was just telling this young man here that's sitting next to me that I got my start doing hip hop radio. That had anything to do with sports. I just always loved sports.
What was your name?
I was Elle. You know what I mean? I was Elle. You know.
You can't give us a quick air check. I'm not gonna embarrass you. I mean, you can if you want.
Oh my God. Okay, all right. Song comes in, right? Should I use like ESPN or should I use the actual station?
Do whatever you got to do.
Right.
Whatever call letters you want.
It's the People Station, V103, Elle Duncan holding you down, middays with Elle coming up. Got the free money kitty, giving away $1,003. But exactly.
I get it, but the point
right?
is, it's reps, it's in the business,
Thank
it's
you.
something that now shapes what you do.
The point is that although what I was doing doesn't have anything to do with what I do at SportsCenter, for 4 hours, as you know, Clinton,
right.
I had to find compelling storylines. I had to ad-lib. I had to find a way to engage people for 4 hours. And so I took that's 7 years of experience of that, and tried to apply it to what I do now, which is the ability to come up with story. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
It's a different medium. It's a different subject matter, but it's all in the same, comes from the same well.
We're talking with Elle Duncan of SportsCenter here on The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Wednesday, NABJ 2017, live in New Orleans. I asked Michael Eaves this. I asked Ryan Smith this. I'm going to ask you this. Diversity in newsrooms. It's not just a numbers thing. It's a merit of journalism thing. Tell me a little bit about how you feel about how certain companies or certain people do this, because to me, the story of Colin Kaepernick speaking to Steve Weish about this, the first time he sat, not when he kneeled, but the only reason he even said anything was because he felt comfortable with him. And that was a situation where he probably doesn't say that to any other reporter, and no other reporter probably even asks him about it.
Sure.
But now look at where that story's developed, and that to me is a larger part of what the diversity issue is. It's not just so that you can look in the newsroom and say, oh, look, there go black faces. You get a better product as well.
You need to represent. It's funny because, so let me give you an example. And I kind of felt like I had to ask a black person moment. And listen, I know you've probably been engaged in plenty of those conversations. But Eaves was actually involved in one of these. But we're sitting there, and it was during the Stanley Cup final. And you know how Nashville throws the catfish out. Well, they wanted to do a highlight treatment where P.K. Subban's face, they superimposed it on top of one of the catfish, and they wanted to toss it out on the ice, right? So I get called over to one of my producers, and he's like, Elle, can you just take a look at this? I'm like, all right. So I take a look at it. I'm like, okay. I don't find it particularly funny, but, like, it's not, but, like, but what's the issue? He's like, that's the question. Is it an issue? And I was like, are you asking me if this is racist?
I mean, I'm laughing because this is sort of topically comical, but that's a serious question that happens a lot.
Absolutely. Because, again, I think that it's important, right, to be very – we've seen it time and time again with some of these advertising companies, right, and some of these people who you could tell that there were no brown people in the room when these decisions were being made. And I do. I think it's important. I think it's reflective because I think that the broader, right, that your newsroom looks, the more opinions are represented. And I think that we all kind of I bring a different perspective. Ask a black person makes me laugh because, look, we all have different experiences and we don't all feel the same way.
We are not a monolith, by the by.
We are not a monolith. We don't all speak. We as black people, that's what I think. So I have a totally different take on things coming from Georgia, being 34, than even Eaves had. Eaves had to bring something to someone's attention at work before that went back to the 30s. They never would have. This kid's a 23-year-old intern, right, who's cutting a highlight, and he doesn't know. He doesn't know about the background of black racers having to come and race horses and how you shouldn't make Mr. Freeze race a horse on a high. Like, he didn't know that.
Mr. Freeze being the Atlanta in-game attraction runner guy.
He didn't understand that would be insensitive to show him, right? And so we didn't end up doing it. But again, had Eaves not had the background and the knowledge that he had, maybe that goes on.
And the empowerment to say something.
And the empowerment to say something.
Right.
And so I appreciate at the very least that in our newsroom, there is a lot of conversation that happens. And there is a lot of, okay, well, you as an older person, or you as a black person, or you as a Hispanic person, you as a white. These conversations need to be had so that you don't have to apologize later.
Yeah. She's Elle Duncan. You can find her on SportsCenter, and I promise I will get on the air.
Will you please come and hang out with us, Clinton?
I promise. I swear.
Okay. Listen, I know that you are a very, very busy man, but I look forward to your commentary, and I look forward to you quipping on Twitter.
Well, thank you.
I love that you clap back. The king of clap back.
Coming up, Roger Goodell says he supports a shorter preseason in the NFL. I'll give you my thoughts on that. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones. This is The Right Time on ESPN Radio.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Wednesday live from New Orleans, Louisiana. We're on the floor of the Convention and the Career Fair at NABJ 2017, and ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. All guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, and you can get in touch with me through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at ESPN Radio, at Clinton Yates. Some of y'all are asking about the shorts that I'm wearing. I got them at the Gap, if you're really wondering. I go to the mall sometimes. I buy off the rack. More importantly, though, let's talk about football. Roger Goodell talked to Bob Glauber of Newsday, Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL, and he said something that I got to admit I was never expecting to hear. He said he supports a shorter preseason. Now, the reason why I say that I was never expecting to hear that is because of basically one reason. Cutting games is not something you hear the NFL talk about much at all. Because cutting games means cutting revenue. Not just in terms of butts in the seats, but obviously in terms of televisions and ads. Now, the preseason has long been the fodder of those who have been looking to tinker with the schedule. There's been a couple of different things that people have suggested. You cut 2 preseason games. You maybe add a bye week. You maybe go to an 18-game schedule. There's all sorts of permutations of things that fans of the NFL who don't particularly enjoy the way that the schedule shakes out have suggested over the years. But this is a pretty major sort of admission in that direction if you're Goodell. He says there's value to them, building a team, evaluating players, but there are other ways of doing that. I think we could do it in 3 games. Almost every coach has agreed what we could get done. We could get done what we need to in 3 games. Any change in the overall game structure, any change in the structure, we said that we would collectively bargain. Okay. I mean, I think that, look, as a fan, do I need 4 preseason games? Absolutely not. There's a game this week with my boys, the Skins. They play the Ravens. It's about 25% chance I watch that bad boy. I believe it's the Texans and the Panthers tonight, Shannon.
Correct.
I think they're playing. Cam's definitely not going to play. Deshaun Watson's not starting. There's so many downsides to preseason football that it's tough to really rationalize having that many games. And if you play in the Hall of Fame game, you get 5 games. Now, the reason you have it, obviously, is not for starters. It's for marginal players. They might make a roster. Somebody busts a wedge. Somebody makes a play you didn't expect them to make. And then all of a sudden, the coaches look at them a little differently and say, you know what? Push comes to shove, I might need that guy. Because you can't simulate game speed in practice. So there is that element. I mean, I understand it. But I got to say, this is one place, and I don't commend this guy that much. This is a pretty decent stance from Roger Goodell to at least open up intellectually to the concept of slowing some games or shortening the season a little bit. Because in light of what we've seen regarding all these studies, and I'm not going to jump into a whole discussion about CTE and yada yada, but we know what the effects of football are on the body. For Goodell to bend even slightly and say, yeah, you know what, I hear a lot of that from fans. Maybe they're not so useful. To me, if I'm an NFL fan, or at least somebody who considers himself to be a progressive NFL fan, I'm pretty impressed by this from Goodell. I'm not going crazy over it. I'm not calling anybody up to talk about it. But I certainly think in my own heart, yeah, you know what? Maybe they're trying to do something to actually make sure that their players can be safer throughout the course of the season. You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Wednesday, live at NABJ 2017, New Orleans, Louisiana. Sidebar, it's my first time ever in this city, so that'll be fun as we shake out the rest of the week. We've been talking to a lot of people from around the network. Hopefully we're going to get a lot more different perspectives from other people as we go on through the week. But right now we're talking about the NFL. I think the larger question here, Shannon, is, though, does this knock the door down? Let's just push this all the way to the extreme sort of extrapolation. You shorten the preseason. Are we ready for a more than 17-week regular season in the NFL, Shannon? I don't think we are.
So that's going to be tough, though, because you have, all right, if you have if you have an extended regular season, so then how does that work as far as contracts as well? Because now contracts are based on a certain number of regular season games. You're going to have to change that. So then that's going to have to be collectively bargained as well. So I think right now it's easier to minimize the preseason than it is to add additional games to the regular season.
That makes sense. And if I'm being honest, I would prefer – I can't remember the math right now because I don't keep these numbers at the top of my head, but I've seen proposals for what I believe is a 19-week, 18-game, 2-bye-week system. I could be wrong on that. I'll have to check that during the break. But I'm fine with extending the regular season if you add a bye. Like, to me, you can say, oh, well, what's the difference if there's still football games? Well, the difference is that, A, they're live competition that count towards something. And that's pretty much the only one. You're paying guys real game checks for real games. If you're going to have them out there, they might as well be real games. I'm not saying you cut preseason games entirely. But if moving toward more games overall is something that the NFL is trying to do, this is a good step. And I like it a lot. I can't believe I'm actually defending something that Roger Goodell did, but maybe that's just me because football is finally back around and I'm actually sort of, I don't know, softening a little bit. You know what? That's what fascinates me. It's brought to you by Firestone Complete Auto Care, keeping cars running newer, longer. Whatever you drive a Firestone. Still not happy about what's going on in Ashburn. Coming up, the NFL is going to hire full-time officials. But what will that actually accomplish? We'll ask Adam Schefter next on The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates filling in.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
It's The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Wednesday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Hit me up on Twitter if you want to tell me how much you hate me on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. I reserve the right to roast you in front of your friends and family and not apologize for it. Joining us on the line right now, though, however, is, of course, the very gracious Adam Schefter. Adam, how are you today?
Hey, Clinton, how you doing, right?
I'm pretty good. I'm live in New Orleans at NABJ, but I'm talking football with you right now. The NFL says they're going to hire 21 to 24 full-time officials. I have multiple questions about this, but number one, Adam, what are they looking to achieve with this move?
Well, I think they want people who are around it all the time. Not that these officials don't live it, eat it, breathe it as it is, but I think that they're looking for more consistency. I can tell you that there have been any number of teams of coaches who have been completely and increasingly frustrated by some of the officials. And I think the problem is not that the officials are incompetent, it's that the technology of the game is so good and the speed of the game is so fast, and these guys do actually a pretty good job of keeping up. But it's fairly easy to miss calls, and miss calls in certain costly situations. And any missed call is a big business decision because people could lose their jobs over that, frankly.
Yeah. That's what I don't get about this. I mean, it was 2012 when the Fail Mary happened, Wayne Elliott and all that. That was a long time ago. And now the next step we have to that is out of, 100-odd officials, only 20 to 24 are going to go full-time. I don't seem to understand why they don't seem to want to jump into the pool with both feet as opposed to dipping a toe in.
Well, I think maybe, first of all, you've got to find a certain number of people who are willing to do it because it's a full-time commitment and many have other full-time jobs. I think that there's a certain candidate pools that they need to just see and draw from, and who knows who is qualified to become full-time and who's not. There's a lot of questions around this, and I got to be honest with you, my knowledge of this is only on a periphery basis. I think we all have great questions, more questions about officials than we have answers right now.
Fair enough. We're talking with Adam Schefter here on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Clinton Yates filling in for Bomani Jones on the right time on ESPN Radio. Roger Goodell said he supports a situation that leads to less preseason games, saying that he hears a lot from it from fans. Were you surprised about the fact that he admitted that? Because it's not often that we hear about a reduction of games being a thing the NFL is going to do.
No. They have wanted to do this, I think, for a while. It's something that they have toyed with. And again, you have to think money. Okay, if they can find ways to shorten the preseason and then add on to the postseason, that could mean hundreds of millions of dollars in added revenue to the NFL. And the truth of the matter is, if they reduce the preseason schedule, nobody would miss those preseason games. There have been enough calls over enough time from enough people that say 4 preseason games is way too many, particularly when in the last preseason game, nobody plays any of their regulars anyway. And this year, with the elimination of the cut-down day to 75 players from 90 to make it just one cut-down at the end, you're going to see all these players that you never heard of playing in the 4th week of the preseason. So already we're down to 3 preseason games in an unofficial way.
Right.
Now the league is saying, how can we make it 3 games, 2 games, whatever they decide is the best formula. You shorten it by a week or so. Maybe it means adding more playoff games, and I think that ultimately may be the goal.
See, I would think that it would add more regular season games. You say playoff games. Well, how would that work, if I may ask?
I don't know. But, again, if you maybe you eliminate the second bye and there's only one bye and an extra team gets in, just off the top of my head, there are various ways that they could go through this. I'd have to sit down and study it, which I haven't done. But I can tell you that there's been discussion always about expanding the playoff field. That's gone on. And it's a question of what they can do and what they can make work.
We're talking with Adam Schefter here on the right time with Bomani Jones. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Last year, over 3 million drivers switched to Progressive. Call or click today and find out if you could save. Are we any closer to a decision on the circumstance with Ezekiel Elliott and the Dallas Cowboys, Adam?
Well, we're not getting a decision today. And, again, I thought we would get it this week. And it's not going to be today. It's 5:37 Eastern. Not coming down. Maybe tomorrow, maybe more likely Friday. I still think this week is certainly within the realm of possibility. I still think discipline is within the realm of possibility. Nobody knows exactly why it's taken as long as it has, other than, number one, the league wants to be as thorough as it can because it wants to avoid any of the types of situations that it had in the past where other information, videos surface that the league has not seen, reviewed, factored into the decision. And there was a point in this process where I think the league felt like Ezekiel Elliott's camp was slow to turn over material that it had requested, which delayed and pushed back the process, which is one reason that we don't have a decision today.
Okay. Adam, I want to ask you about something sort of not off the board, but I find this very interesting. Byron Leftwich calling plays today for the Raiders.
Yeah.
This seems to be a sort of a quick ascent considering sort of how long he's been in that organization in terms of what he's been doing. What do you know about that circumstance?
Not surprised in the slightest. When you talk to the people in the Arizona organization and you hear what Byron Leftwich can do and what he's capable of, he's on the head coaching track. And there'll be a point in time in the future where I believe Byron Leftwich is going to be the head coach of an NFL team. So this is the next step in that evolution. I believe his current title is quarterbacks coach.
Yeah.
And they recognize that if you're going to experiment, the preseason will be a time to do it. He's got a feel for the offense. He knows what they want to do, what they want to accomplish. So he'll get some experience that they can then use and build off of in the future. And again, I think he's on the path to becoming a head coach, so I'm not surprised to hear this one bit.
Going around the league a little bit more here, we've got a couple different situations in Pittsburgh between Le'Veon Bell and Martavis Bryant. Can you give me an update on where either one of those situations are and where you think Bryant is going to fit in when he gets back?
Well, I think the league will reinstate him. And I think that the surprise is that it hasn't happened yet. But by all accounts, he's been a model citizen. He's grown up and matured, and he's not smoking the way that he used to. And I think that we're waiting for clearance to hear about clearance from the NFL any day now. Maybe it's this week, maybe it's next week. Until he gets that clearance, he's not allowed to practice or play in a game. So maybe they've knocked him out of the first preseason game already by not clearing him at this point in time. But I do think Martavis Bryant will get cleared, and I do think he'll be able to play this season. In regards to the other situation with Le'Veon Bell, he's a holdout. Well, not really a holdout because he didn't sign his franchise tender.
Right.
So holdouts are players who are under contract and don't report. Le'Veon Bell is not under contract, so he's not technically a holdout. He just hasn't shown up to training camp. And from the moment they didn't get a long-term deal done by the franchise deadline of July 17th, it was fairly apparent that there was no reason for him to show up at Steelers training camp any earlier than he had to. As long as he's back in camp by the first week of the regular season, he collects his full $12.1 million salary on the franchise tag. And I think the thing with Le'Veon Bell is you want to just put yourself in a position to have the best year possible. So if that means missing the first 2-3 weeks of camp and getting back there sometime, say, around the second, third preseason game where you don't play that game, you get one little tune-up, well, maybe no tune-ups, but are going through drills to be ready for the regular season, that's ideal. And that's what he's going to do. He's not going to report there any sooner than he has to. He's going to report when he feels it gives him the best chance to be in the optimal shape and conditioning level for the regular season, and then he'll go attack this season and try to hit the free agent market after it's over.
Last thing I'll ask you, Adam. Houston goes to Carolina tonight. For the average fan that is not particularly interested in the Texans or the Panthers, what are we looking for in this game?
Well, I think what's interesting about this game tonight is, frankly, we've got J.J. Watt coming back from back injury. Now, he may play a series or two tops, and you're not probably going to notice him all that much. But you will be able to notice Deshaun Watson playing quarterback for the Houston Texans, their first-round draft pick. They traded up to get. He'll play after Tom Savage does, and I think everybody wants to see how he plays tonight against Carolina. And you're going to see Christian McCaffrey, the running back from Stanford, who I think a lot of people want to see. So between the first preseason games for Christian McCaffrey and Deshaun Watson, that in and of itself is a reason to see how tonight's preseason game unfolds.
He's Adam Schefter. He knows pretty much every single thing about the NFL. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care.
No problem. Coming up, Eldrick Tiger Woods says he's entering a diversion program on October 25th. Got to talk about my man Tiger and his fall from grace. It has really become not a sad situation, but one worth really thinking about. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones on The Right Time on ESPN Radio.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Wednesday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get in touch with us through the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. Don't forget, baseball season rolls along. Tune in tonight as the Rays host the Red Sox. It's presented by Indeed.com. Coverage begins at 6:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPNRadio.com, and the ESPN app. Headline, Tiger Woods to enter diversion program October 25th. Now, there's sort of the obvious about this, which is clearly Tiger Woods' golf career has fallen apart for various reasons. There was the Thanksgiving Day circumstance. There was the revelation of his private life that some people, and by some people I mean me, definitely believe forced him to lose his edge from a golfer standpoint. There was the back injuries, all sorts of injuries. And then there was the fact that just sort of age caught up to him, and he was not of the generation of golfers that was really considered to be feared anymore. And then this DUI happened. He was asleep at the wheel in a car in the middle of the road. I believe it may have been running or not. Woods pleaded not guilty to driving under the influence on Wednesday, but he agreed to enter a diversion program that would see the charge drop later this year. He agreed to plead guilty to reckless driving in an incident that happened on October 25th and enter the county's program for first-time DUI offenders. It was not alcohol-related. Not that splitting those hairs particularly matters, but I know people react a certain way when booze is involved versus when meds are involved. My thing is this. I don't know what to think of what Tiger's future is going to be. You know, you see guys sometimes come out of leagues and you say, man, I hope he can get clean. Maybe the squad he played for, the franchise he was with for a long time can give him a role, an ambassadorial sort of thing. Or maybe he was a really good scout or was a good player that was good enough to identify other guys, or just the type of person you liked having around your facility because of the memories he either stirred up or something he was simply able to do to motivate other people. Ain't none of that in golf, though. You're out there by your lonesome. I mean, sure, you can design a bunch of courses. You can start a bunch of foundations. But there's no real central location to return to center yourself. And this is what I worry about with Tiger Woods as a human being. Forget the golf. I'm not worried about whether or not Tiger Woods wins another golf tournament for the rest of his life at all. And I say that as a guy that liked him very much as a golfer. I said this yesterday on the program when we were discussing the undefeated top 50 black athletes list, one that Eldrick is not on. Sidebar. Reminder, it's a survey. But my point was, as somebody that grew up watching a fair amount of golf just as it being a major sport, when Tiger came along, he changed everything, and now I don't watch golf anymore because he doesn't play. But I still care about Tiger the human being. And I'm worried that a guy like that who was so specifically driven to one single goal and achieved quite a bit of it, Shannon. It's not as if Tiger Woods was somehow some unaccomplished player who just crumbled out of nowhere. I don't know how much better Tiger could have gotten. Sure, he could have broken a couple more records, but, he achieved the pinnacle, in my opinion, Shannon, and that's almost what worries me most. There is really no reason for him to try to get back onto the golf course because he doesn't have anything to prove to anybody as the best golfer of his generation.
While I agree with all of that, realistically, though, there are people that are still, and even Woods probably himself, are still going to believe that, hey, I have a shot to get back to that level. Now, obviously, I think it's unrealistic that he can sustain it, but you never know. He come out and have a good tournament, play in a major, have a good major, and think, hey, I can get back. So there's always going to be part of him and part of the golf fans that feel as though he can at least, for one tournament or two, get back to that Woods level, which is I just don't see happening.
But are you a fan? At that point, are you really a fan of Tiger? I guess what I'm saying is, sometimes when fans attach themselves to athletes, sure, they attach themselves to their level of success, but they also attach themselves on some level to their personality and who they are. And I guess what I'm asking a lot of people out there is, if you're rooting for Tiger, are you rooting for him in a golf sense or a human sense? Or is it even possible to separate those? Because I think at this point, his human side, not that his golf side is not his human side, you understand what I'm saying here. I'm way more concerned about that than I am about anything having to do with the golf. And I'm also concerned that pursuing the golf still and to this day, even though it is the only thing he knows, is going to prevent him from being able to do this other stuff. This guy's got to find something else that matters to him. Because when the golf goes away, which it effectively has, I don't know who he can be. And I don't know that he knows the answer to that either. It reminds me of these guys who, when they're done playing football, are just completely lost, or any real sport for that matter, but I think of football in particular because of various, recent incidents. But I'm really worried about Tiger in many ways. The family situation isn't the same. A lot of things went downhill after his father Earl passed. That's sort of a trite line that we all know, but it's true. What happens to Tiger in the next 10 years is going to be a fascinating story for those of us who learn to love golf, who learn to appreciate golf, and eventually really like Tiger a lot. What happens to that guy soon is going to be something to watch, and I'm not very confident about how it's going to go. Coming up, Jay Harris, SportsCenter host, is going to join us. We're live here at NABJ in New Orleans. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones on The Right Time on ESPN Radio.
Thanks for listening to The Right Time podcast. Please come back tomorrow for more. And don't forget to listen to The Right Time with Bomani Jones from 4 p.m. to 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Longtime listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.
Okay, awesome.
You should call them.
I will.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Welcome to The Right Time podcast. The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
What up, kiddos? You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Wednesday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Hit us up through the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. Joining us right now is Jay Harris, SportsCenter host. By the by, beginning August 28th, Jay, along with Randy Scott and Sage Steele, will be anchoring SportsCenter AM.
Cool. I'm looking forward to it.
So am I.
I've always wanted to be on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line.
Yeah, lifelong goal?
Yeah.
We are live here.
Check that off the bucket list.
At NABJ 2017 in New Orleans. Jay, let me ask you just off the top in terms of your experience with this convention. How many times have you been here? Are you one of these guys that's gone for years? We talked to Michael Eaves earlier in the program. He said that has been something that was invaluable to him at one point of his career, and now representing ESPN on the other side of it. I'm just wondering where you stand on how far NABJ has come in your life and what you've done with it.
Oh, I agree with Michael wholeheartedly. I think this is convention number 15 for me.
Wow, okay.
So I remember being the guy with the tape and the resume going, would you look at me, critique me? Hey, can you give a brother a job? To the person who critiques and tries to help young folks out.
Okay.
I like this part a lot better than the other part, to be honest with you. It has afforded me the ability to help guide a lot of young folks. And you see them come back, you see them get jobs, and you stay in touch, and you're like, yeah, this is pretty cool.
How much input do you give on a personal level? I mean, how much do you touch people outside of this, and what do you tell them? I mean, I know I talk to a fair amount of people, but I'm also not on air on SportsCenter. I wonder what it is you specifically tell people, because I'm sure there's a lot of kids out there listening who don't have the opportunity to come to an NABJ, who do want an idea of how to get into this business or how to thrive from the position they're already at.
I probably tell them too much. I mean, when I do a tape critique, I do not hold back. From dress to run-on sentences to bad questions to whatever. I let it hang out because I think honesty is the best policy. For someone who wants to get into the business, first of all, you have to have a passion for the business. You know that.
Yep.
You have to have a fair amount of knowledge about the business. And you also, I think, the business should be thought of not as I want to do sports or I want to do news. I want to. Stuart Scott told me this a long time ago. You want to be a storyteller. You want to tell stories about fill in the blank. I started in news. It took me the longest time to realize that news and sports, it's pretty much the same thing. I could tell a story about Larry Fitzgerald just like I could tell about the Pittsburgh School Board. It's telling a story.
Right.
So you want to be a storyteller, and you want to impact your viewer on a particular day.
We're talking with Jay Harris here, SportsCenter host on The Right Time with Bomani Jones. Clinton Yates filling in here. We're live at NABJ 2017, New Orleans. having a good time, looking around, seeing a lot of young folks who are looking to be a part of this business and a lot of people who are a part of this business. Tell me a little bit about your path. People ask me all the time, Yates, how'd you get here? What happened? What did you do? What was a break you caught? Is there any sort of, can you lay out, if you don't have to take forever with it, but sort of how you got to the point that you are right now?
Oh, sure. Graduated from Old Dominion University. I was doing a telemarketing job in D.C. I didn't like. Called a buddy of mine who was a news director at a little radio station in Portsmouth. I said, can you help a brother out? I met him in college. You know what I want to do. And he said, I can give you plenty of experience, but I can't pay you any money. So I think I was making $16,000 in D.C., and I went back to Norfolk making $0. And I went to work for free.
What'd you do?
I was a radio anchor reporter.
Okay.
He put me on the air. He let me go out and make mistakes. He made me go out and gather stories. He sent me to Hampton University one day to do a story on Lou Gossett, who was there to speak and to
famous actor.
Yeah, to introduce a new degree program. And I went to talk to Lou Gossett, and I put my tape recorder down to get the Lou Gossett sound, and I forgot to press play and record.
So you got no Lou Gossett sound.
I got to the car, put my cassette in. I'm dating
old
myself.
school shouts.
And I heard that. That means there's nothing on the cassette. Got back to the station, and Don Roberts' his name. He said, "What'd you get? What'd you get?" And I said, I didn't get nothing. He said, "What are you talking about? You didn't get nothing." I said, "It's Lou Gossett. He's fiddler. Officer and gentleman. I ain't got nothing." He leaned in and said, "Don't you ever go to a story and not come back with the story." And he could have fired me on the spot, as much as you can fire someone who's working for free.
Right.
But that was, he let me make mistakes, which was great. And he started paying me a little bit of money, then went to Pittsburgh. Then Pittsburgh got into a little TV, local news, radio again, national radio news for the Sheridan Broadcasting Network. And Fox came into the came into the market. And I knew a lot of people at Fox from my radio days, and they said, we'll give you an opportunity temporarily because we need someone with more TV experience. We have a position on the weekends, so you be our temporary reporter, which is fine with me. I just wanted a foot in the door. So the first weekend, they made me put everything on tape. Next weekend, they let me go live.
Okay.
They thought I did a good job. 3 months later, they were like, "Hey, you want to work here full-time?" So I said, sure, I can do this. So I kind of flip-flopped. I did the TV full-time and the radio part-time. And then years later, ESPN.
I asked that to say because so many people don't understand, and we've covered this with a couple people, is that it's not just a matter of, I got good in college and then I hit the big time. Not even close to that. And it's also not a matter of, hey, I stuck with one station my whole life and I caught a break.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a matter of getting a fair amount of experience doing a lot of things, some of which don't include journalism. I mean, if you were working for free in Portsmouth, you had to be doing something else.
I was the Color Town rent-to-own man.
Right, which gave you enough life experience to understand what you were reporting on.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. You did what you have to do.
I mean, and I think that's a valuable lesson to a lot of different people. One of the questions I've been asking a lot of folks, Jay, today is about newsroom diversity.
All right.
Colin Kaepernick, the first time he sat for the national anthem, it was in the third week of the preseason. It was before he took a knee in San Diego. The person who asked him about it after that game was Steve Weish.
Yes.
And he talked to him about it, and he mentioned that he probably wouldn't have told that story to anybody else. My reason I bring that up is because, to me, that's one of those times when you can see that newsroom diversity is not just about the numbers. It's about the quality of the journalism that you're going to get because of the people you cover and the people you've got. What do you think about that in terms of where we are now with how our newsrooms are diversified?
We can always be better. I think we have done a poor job in this business of recognizing our total audience and realizing that the total audience needs to be served, and we should mirror our audience with our on-air and even our behind-the-scenes folks in the newsroom.
Absolutely. That second part is very important.
Yeah, because there's so many stories to be told and so many different perspectives. I mean, at the end of the day, we are all human beings, but we all have different backgrounds and we all have differences. So why not celebrate those differences and use those differences to our advantage? And I think there's so many businesses where we could do a better job of that.
Yeah.
And especially in this one, we're telling stories about people. You need people who have experience with people to tell good stories about people. Even with your Colin Kaepernick example.
Yeah.
The story that wouldn't have gotten told had Steve not been the one there listening to Colin or approaching Colin, because I don't believe anyone else approached him.
They didn't. No, he was absolutely right. Anything else you got coming up for the week? You speaking on any panels? Anybody you're looking forward to seeing while you're here at NABJ?
I just enjoy being here and seeing folks year after year in the reunion, folks from competing networks or stations, folks you see coming up in the business. I'm not on any panels. I'll be here in the booth critiquing tapes and just hanging out, having a little fun, and actually doing a lot of work.
Well, that's what NABJ is about. A little fellowship, a little professionalism, and a little fun. He's Jay Harris. He hosts Sports Center. And again, beginning August 28th, Jay, along with Randy Scott and Sage Steele, will be on Sports Center 8 a.m. You looking forward to that?
Wake up with us early. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. He's dressed fly today, too, by the way. You know what I'm saying? Jay's out here looking good. Appreciate it, man.
All right, Clint.
Coming up, will the NBA's new schedule stop teams from resting their stars on a regular basis? I'll tell you what I think about that next. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones on The Right Time on ESPN Radio.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
People are watching me dance. It's The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. I'm dancing in a leather chair right now. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Wednesday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on The Right Time up here via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get in touch with us through the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. I just want to hear Shannon tell me about this song, though.
Actually, it's The Block Is Hot by Lil Wayne. And the thing that's really going to date us and make us feel old is that he recorded this song in 1998. It was released in 99, which would make this song 18 years old.
This song going to college.
The Block Is Hot is old enough to vote.
The Block Is Hot is on a meal plan wearing flip-flops with a lanyard, cruising the dorms looking for a video game to play.
Yeah.
That's what The Block Is Hot is doing.
The Block Is Hot is asking, y'all trying to go to the calf a little bit later?
Yo, I got to go to the gym right quick, but we can meet up. Get that late lunch.
Yeah, The Block Is Hot is chilling in the student union right now, or new dorm, because every college has a dorm that hasn't been named yet, and they just call it new dorm.
Oh, man, I love this song. I was in high school when it came out, and I thought I was the man when I used to bump this joint. But moving to the NBA, they've decided that they're going to adjust their schedule for the 2017-2018 season in an effort to prevent key players from resting during regular season games. This is all according to ESPN's Brian Windhorst. The idea is that the schedule changes should help players maintain their health. The schedule is going to expand by a week and push the start date earlier into October. Here are some of the key changes. No 4 games in 5-day stretches. Fewer than 18 games over every 30-day period. A reduction of 5 games in 7-day stretches for each team by cutting those types of scenarios in half. 40 total occurrences next season versus 90 last year. 40 fewer back-to-back games this upcoming season, and more weekend games even during football season. There was a huge area of concern, obviously, remember last year when the Warriors rested Steph, Clay, Draymond, and Iggy against the Spurs in a nationally televised game in March. The Cavs did the same thing the very next week when Kyrie, LeBron, and Kevin Love all sat against the Clippers. Now, the obvious problem here is that there's too many games. Like, I get it that stretching the games out is going to potentially allow players, to get their regimens in and do all the things they can do to treat their bodies so that they can be up for each game. But to me, this is bad math. Like, ultimately, the issue is not necessarily the time between games. It's the amount of games played. You've still got to play 82 games. And you still got to play the playoffs. And if it's an Olympic year, you still got to do that as well. So while I think this makes sense in sort of I don't want to say it's short-sighted, but I just don't think that for the types of players that are going to be sitting, that the gaps between the games are really the issue. It's the overall number. Shannon, you remember this. The best season the NBA had in my lifetime was when? When they started the season after the new year. They banged out 50 games. It happened to be that your Knicks ended up going to the finals. But it was great.
I think to the initial question, I don't think it's really going to factor too heavily in whether or not stars are going to play or not. I think that ultimately comes down to the coach's decision. I do think, though, that overall quality of play can improve with the extra rest.
I see that. I understand that point. And I actually probably agree with you there. But the larger issue of whether or not stars sit or don't sit, to me, is correlated to the amount of games overall. I could lop off 10, 15 games on the NBA schedule and not miss a beat. I mean, what are we talking about here? I don't think it's super too long, but I know the playoffs take long enough. shorten that regular season a little bit. I realize there's money there, and I'm sort of talking in, generalities here, but do we really need 82 NBA games a year? Probably not. I mean, I really don't actually think the average, and I'm saying average hardcore, meaning somebody who is the average hardcore fan, not the average fan. Anyway, like I don't really think that many people would complain if you cut the NBA season to 75 or 70 games even. Like, you just don't need that many. As for whether or not this is going to make people like guys less for skipping games, I don't know. It always fascinates me when people hit that bell. Oh, you can't even show up to work. I go out and drink 9 tequilas and I manage to show up for my job the next day. Why can't you do the same when it's only your job to play basketball and you get paid millions of dollars? You know why? Because there are 500,000 dudes across the country who can click mice and flip burgers. There are not that many dudes that can bang jumpers and dunk on somebody's head, unfortunately. That's just how that works. So if they don't want to play, they ain't going to play because the replaceability factor is just not there. That's the difference between your job and a basketball player's job in the NBA. You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Wednesday. Nothing makes a summer holiday, birthday, or anniversary more magical than 1-800-Flowers.com. Right now, when you order a dozen multicolored roses for only $29.99, you'll get another dozen absolutely free. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. The NBA season could be much shorter. I would shorten it on the front end. Move it further into football season so that when football hits that mid-season lull, or maybe sort of closer towards that late part when you don't really know who's going to make the playoffs, but the Thanksgiving games still sort of matter. Move it on up. There's a lot of people that have said for years, just start the NBA season on Christmas Day. I would love that. That's when half the people in America start tuning into the NBA season anyway.
Oh, yeah, that's the unofficial opening night for a casual NBA fan. # casual NBA fan is Christmas Day.
Right. And, if you just adjusted and said, hey, all right, we're doing that, I don't think that would be that bad. That would actually be kind of cool. We're getting sort of off on a tangent here, but I'm a big fan of leagues owning days as a matter of course. Between New Year's Day with college football, Thanksgiving obviously is the NFL, Christmas Day is the NBA. I've said for years that the NHL needs to figure out a way to do this as well. Get rid of all these winter classics and just put them all on the same day. That's a different discussion for another time.
A bowl day, like a New Year's Day bowl season here with hockey.
Oh, dude. I mean, if you really want me to explain this, I think what the NHL should do is you start the games in Europe. You got all outdoor games that day. You start them in Europe, you end them in California, and you've got games from 8 a.m. to midnight. That's what you do. And you take over a random day of the year that may or may not be a holiday, and it's not about them having outside games every single other, 4 or 5 a year. You just have 6 in a day, and people will choose that one day to actually watch outdoor hockey that day. That's a different discussion, though. The NBA, on the other hand, I don't know if this is going to change anything. Like you said, sure, the games might be better, but ultimately these guys are going to sit anyway, and this is sort of a topical change in my mind that's only going to make the season longer when, in fact, it needs to get shorter. Coming up, will the new schedule stop teams from DNP resting their stars? We're going to talk to Tom Haberstroh about that. He's an ESPN NBA insider. My name's Clinton Yates. I'm filling in for Bomani Jones on The Right Time on ESPN Radio.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
It's a quiet storm here on The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Wednesday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get in touch with us through the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. Right now, speaking to us on said Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, easy for me to say, is Tom Haberstroh. Tom, we've been talking about the NBA, trying to space out these gaps in between games, eliminate the number of back-to-backs. For the layperson, explain to me, I know you are a scholar of this topic, explain what the initial thought process is here in trying to do this in terms of rest and gameplay for the NBA.
Well, Clinton, there's two things going on with the NBA is LeBron James is taking games off, marquee games, national TV games, because he's worried about getting injured. There's that is fans don't like the idea of a healthy player, a quote-unquote healthy player resting, and it creates this atmosphere for fans where these guys aren't tough and they're not gritting it out like this is a soft league. And that's one thing Adam Silver doesn't want to happen. And secondly, players are more likely to be injured when they play on a second night of a back-to-back. And so that is something where that every year teams have to do 15 times a year, where just about half the schedule is in a back-to-back set, and it's just not healthy. And the NBA knows it. And in the fact, last year, Adam Silver said at the press conference, he was like, look, these two teams, the Cavs and the Warriors, both like rested their stars during the regular season, and now they're healthy in the finals. It's crazy their ability to do that. So it's a really big balance for Adam Silver to figure out what's best for the league, because he needs LeBron James playing in these marquee games.
Not for nothing, Tom, but what took him so long? I mean, is LeBron James really that much of a star? Not in terms of now, I know that, but in terms of the history of the league, that they finally decided to listen to this guy. I mean, I think there's something to be said for that. This is not new, but they're finally changing because of him. I find that to be rather remarkable.
Well, it's a lot of money at stake, right? So one of the reasons why this took so long is, one, the money talks. And so a lot of guys played on bad knees or bad ankles because they wanted to make their coaches happy. And it made money for the league. But ultimately, the science is coming around where these training staffs know that it's, if LeBron's in the red zone, they don't want to have him lose 2 months. Right. And, the science is coming around on this, where you have the concussions in the NFL. You have, ultimately, the NBA is getting a lot smarter about your injury risk. So they didn't have this information 10 years ago. They didn't have it 5 years ago. And so now they're being exposed to all this new information, and they're forced to react on it.
We're talking with Tom Haberstroh here on The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Pick from a range of coverage options with the Name Your Price tool to find a price that works for you. Do we think this is going to work? I guess when I look at this, I sort of think, okay, longer season. It doesn't lead me to believe that players are going to end up taking any less games off, because ultimately they still have the same total number of games to play.
Yeah, that's the big problem. I've been a long time proponent of cutting games from the schedule and making it so there are 0 back-to-backs rather than 14 every year for every team. Here's the problem here, Clinton, is if Adam Silver comes out and says to teams, look, we need to stop or curtail the DNP rest problem, like guys resting multiple players or teams resting multiple players on the same night when it's on ABC, when it's on TNT, like that's a problem. If you want to discourage that, what are teams going to do? They're going to just make up injuries. And it's happened before in NBA history, and that's a really scary proposition for fans is, suddenly LeBron James has a sore back, and he's missing the game. You have this mistrust with the product if you think that they're maybe making up injuries. And look, there are about 200 instances last year of DNP rests. Adding a week into the season and getting rid of 2 out of the 16 back-to-backs, that's not going to solve the problem. The answer is no. I don't think this fixes things, but you have to hand it to Adam Silver for making these tough choices and making these rules that Dave Stern did not do when he was the commissioner. And I think a lot of the players are going to have longer careers because of these actions. And I think they don't want to necessarily, in my opinion, be associated with a league like the NFL that denies the science and denies the impact or the severity of some of these injuries that the players are having. So I think it's really good of Adam Silver to have this progressive outlook on player health.
But admittedly, there's a political play on some levels, because Adam Silver can say, hey, I made a change. What's up with you guys still sitting? I mean, I think there is something about this that is mainly optics when you know that in reality it doesn't change a whole lot, no?
Yeah, it's not going to change the fact that, there's 82 games in 177 days. It's pure math. It's really hard to play that number of games and get away with it without any back-to-backs. I mean, here's the issue that we haven't talked about yet, but the rings nature, the nature of the league, rings, like how many rings does Kobe have? How many rings does LeBron have? Like rings. What that does is it minimizes the value of the regular season And if everyone's chasing the rings, then why do they need to play 82 games? And so it waters down the regular season product to an extent. And I think that's a really tricky thing for the league, that if everyone is focused on winning championships and that's the end-all, be-all, then suddenly, like Chris Paul in Houston, why would he play 82 games when if he can stay fresh with 60 games and be healthy for the playoffs, like that's an issue. And so I don't know if adding the number of rest days in the schedule is really going to solve things on the margins. I think it's going to have to be a wholesale change to the system, like cutting a significant chunk of the games, because players are just, they realize that legacies are built in the playoffs. And 82 games, if you miss a few of them, like, what does that matter?
We're talking with Tom Haberstroh here on ESPN Radio, The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in here live at NABJ in New Orleans. Now, Tom, you're speaking my language here. I was saying before, cut half of these, not half, but cut a reasonable amount of these games out of the time slots, and you're fine. It's not a big issue. But my question to you personally is, what do you think is the ideal number of NBA regular season games?
Well, I think they should go to 66, and basically they have no if they do have back-to-backs, have them in the same city, like same teams like they do in Major League Baseball. Like there's no sense in trying to gut it out 82 games when really fans know that in January, like the schedule's set, the standings are set. Like, that's the problem. One of the reasons why NFL is so popular and March Madness is so popular is that, there's a scarcity to the games. And when you have NBA teams where you pretty much know their standings or their seed in the playoffs by January, it creates a lot of dog days in the schedule. And I think if you do cut 20 games from the schedule, you make games matter more, and you do have a little bit of more scarcity. It's not quite the NFL. I think they shouldn't cut it down to, say, 30 games. But there is a redundancy to the NBA schedule that I think they need to take a serious look at to make games matter more and have people tuning in.
Last thing I'll ask you, Tom, do you personally, not as a journalist, as a fan, think the NBA is a soft league?
No. I mean, have you seen LeBron James play basketball?
No, I have. I'm just asking you personally.
No, I think parents around the country are having the same question: is should I let my kid play football? Should I have them play one sport or worry about them burning out? What is the appropriate age to let players throw curveballs? Like, these are all health questions that, frankly, our parents had no idea what the science was, and now that the science is coming around, they're acting on it for their health of their kids or the health of their family. And I think it's not that we're getting softer. I think we're just getting smarter.
He's Tom Haberstroh. He's an ESPN NBA insider, and he knows the math when it comes to the calendar. Thank you, Tom.
You got it. Have a good one.
You too. Coming up, if you haven't heard, your man Floyd Money Mayweather is out here trying to lie to people, and I will not stand for it. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones on The Right Time on ESPN Radio.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
You're listening to The Right Time on ESPN Radio with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Wednesday live in New Orleans at NABJ 2017. It's been an interesting day. We did things a little differently. We're here on the career fair floor where basically different companies recruit, critique, liaise with people who have jobs that are looking to move markets, young kids in college that are trying to find their way into the business. And so as a result, we had some of the people that were here representing ESPN talk to us on the show about their experiences, not only with this particular conference, but coming up in the business. We talked with Michael Eaves of SportsCenter. We talked with Ryan Smith, legal analyst for ABC and ESPN. You've seen him on 2020 as well as Outside the Lines. We talked with Elle Duncan, SportsCenter host. Of course, we flipped the script a little bit and went over to football, talked to Adam Schefter about the NFL and what they're doing regarding referees and some other stuff around the league. Jay Harris stopped in at the end of the program to talk about his experience here, told a fun little story about working for free down in Virginia, a neck of the woods Shannon knows a lot about. And lastly, we had Tom Haberstroh, ESPN NBA insider, who discussed the new situation regarding the schedule and how that's going to affect gameplay in the next season with less back-to-backs and less 4 games in 5 nights, et cetera, et cetera. However, Shannon, tell them what they might have missed.
We know you can't be on top of all the news and information of the day. Now, if you haven't heard.
Floyd Mayweather is selling this fight, and he's doing it in a very peculiar way. He's not with a big, overpowering,
bombastic
form. No, it's very laid back, and it's really strange to hear from him. But if you haven't heard, here is Clinton Yates earlier today on The Right Time discussing the Mayweather-McGregor fight.
Mayweather is suddenly just a very humble man. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm in my 40s. This young man could step into the ring and possibly beat me. Vegas, please change the line so that I can bet on myself and make more money. This is fascinating to me because I think the overall point here is that Money Mayweather is realizing he doesn't really have anything to win in this situation. Think about it. He beats the snot out of McGregor. Okay, big deal. The guy's not a boxer. He plays his normal game, if you will, holds it close to the vest, defends, gets a lot more blows landed, and wins by decision. Okay, again, big deal. You do that against every boxer. Messes around and gets popped a couple times, then maybe knocks McGregor down a couple times. Okay, then you look extremely fragile. And legacy-wise, that sticks with you in a different way. Fourth option being an all-out loss, and obviously that's a super embarrassment. There's not a lot of win-wins in this. So for him to be able to approach this from this way, he's setting up a side narrative that makes it seem like the victory is something that matters if it actually happens. Because otherwise, this is routine. It was just supposed to go down. There's no real scenario in which if you're a Mayweather fan, you say, oh, yeah, that was a good performance. I'm glad he did it. Because for Conor, we understand what's going on here. He needs that paycheck. Does Mayweather really need this? Is it a matter of pride? Is it a matter of lack of relevance? Like, why is he actually doing this outside of the money, which, is fine by me. That's his nickname. But now he's trying to spin it into a sort of reality zone that I don't think anybody's buying. Stephen A. wasn't even buying it, and he was sitting right there in the room with him. Don't think that this has convinced me any more to watch this bout than anything else in the last week. I was about 50-50 on it. Wasn't entirely sure if it was something I was going to buy or something I was going to, you go to your homie's house and you check it out. I don't like the idea of Mayweather trying to lie to me about what this is.
Do you think there are people out there now that still need to be convinced whether or not they're going to watch this fight or not?
Absolutely. You're talking to one of them. I can't decide whether or not. I mean, look, I'll watch it because this is what we do. But if something comes up, I don't know that I'm going to go out of my way to see this fight. I will try to be in a place where it will be visible to me. But I am not sure that I'm going to go out of my way to organize my time around this bout. I really don't at this point. I really, really don't.
All right, moving on. According to CNN Tech, people with hearing implants will soon be able to stream music and take phone calls wirelessly from Apple devices. Yes, Apple's teaming up with the medical device maker Cochlear Limited to develop the first ever cochlear implant sound processor that allows users to stream sound right from their iPhone, iPad, and iPod Touch.
This is what we call the Baby Driver bit, right? That's what that movie is about? I haven't even seen it, but I think I know that that's what it's about, where he hears music constantly throughout the course of the year. This is terrifying. This is terrifying because think about all the things that, you get stuck in your head. We played The Block is Hot 2 segments ago, and I couldn't stop thinking about it for 2 more segments. Think about the fact that if somebody hacked this and found a way to talk to you at all times, you couldn't even control it. Shannon, think about your wife hitting you up. Yo, go to the grocery store. And you can't even control it because it's in your ear.
The constant reminders. The constant
reminders. The nagging would go to a new level. I'm joking. I don't know that your wife nags, and that's sort of a foul thing to say.
Yeah,
but I'm
of course
saying,
not, never.
I can't deal with the notion of my ear space being invaded. Oh, that's sort of scary to think about. And I know you guys are going to all hit me up on Twitter and say, that's what you do every day, Yates. And I'm going to say, I know. And that's the funny part, kiddos.
According to the New York Post, Judge Judy's pockets, which were already straight, her pockets are about to get super duper fat. According to New York Post, Judge Judy sold her entire show archive, which is over 10,000 episodes of the Judge Judy show, as part of a new deal to extend her contract through 2021. The terms of the deal say that she will receive roughly $95 million.
What?
$95 million.
How much that's guaranteed? Is that a backloaded deal?
I don't know if there's a signing bonus involved.
She got to get 10 touchdowns.
Right. I don't know if
in order for that escalator contract to hit.
Quick Judge Judy sidebar, though. She almost put my aunt in contempt of court one time. My aunt was a social worker in New York. And Judge Judy, being the Judge Judy that she is on TV, almost put my Aunt Pam in contempt. So
hold up, you just snuck that in at the end of the show?
Yeah.
That is a tremendous story. We're going to have to revisit that tomorrow. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Like I said, we're live here in New Orleans all week at NABJ. We're going to be talking to different people, Radio Row style, as we bring them along. It's my first time here in town, so you know what I'm going to be doing. Checking out vinyl shops, looking at street art, and watching minor league baseball, which is what I do. Coming up, Red Sox, Rays, AL baseball. Make sure to tune in. I'm Clinton Yates. I filled in for Bomani Jones. This is The Right Time on ESPN Radio. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Right Time Podcast. Please come back tomorrow for more. And don't forget to listen to The Right Time with Bomani Jones from 4 p.m. to 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.